This is VOA News. Reporting by remote, I'm Joe Ramsey. Under pressure in the south of Ukraine, Russia fired missiles and drones into Ukrainian-held Mykolaiv on Sunday, destroying an apartment block in the shipbuilding city near the front, and said the war was trending towards, quote, uncontrolled escalation. Mykolaiv lies roughly 35 kilometers northwest of the front line to occupied Kherson, the southern region where Russia has ordered 60,000 people to flee a Ukrainian counteroffensive. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, who some Russian nationalists have blamed for Moscow's setback since the February 24th invasion, discussed the, quote, rapidly deteriorating situation in calls with French, British, and Turkish counterparts, the ministry said. Without providing evidence, Shoigu said Ukraine could escalate by using a quote-unquote dirty bomb, conventional explosives laced with radioactive material. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba rejected the allegations. Russian authorities say a Russian warplane has crashed into a residential building in Siberia. AP correspondent Ben Thomas reports.
Stunned residents looked on as firefighters doused smoking wreckage in the Siberian city of Irkutsk. The region's governor says an Su-30 fighter jet slammed into a two-story building that housed two families. Both crew members were killed, but there were no casualties on the ground. An investigation into the cause is underway. It's the second time in a week that a combat jet has crashed in a residential area in Russia. A bomber went down October 17th near an apartment building in a city on the Sea of Azov, killing 15 people and injuring another 19. I'm Ben Thomas.
Follow us on the VOA mobile app. This is VOA News. Former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he will not run to lead the Conservative Party, ending intense speculation about a comeback. Johnson, who was ousted in July amid ethics scandals, was widely expected to run to replace Liz Truss, who quit last week. He has spent the weekend trying to gain support from fellow lawmakers and said he'd amassed more than 100 votes, the threshold to run, but he was far behind former Treasury Chief Rishi Sunak in support. Johnson said he had concluded that, quote, you can't govern effectively unless you have a united party in Parliament. His withdrawal leaves Sunak the strong favorite to be Britain's next prime minister. He could win the contest as soon as Monday. China's most powerful leader in decades, President Xi Jinping, increased his dominance after he was named to a third term as head of the ruling Communist Party. AP correspondent Julie Walker reports.
Xi Jinping took power in 2012. In a break with tradition, he was awarded his third five-year term as General Secretary at the end of the party's Central Committee meeting Sunday. The party also named a 7-member standing committee, its inner circle of power, to support his vision of tighter control over society and the struggling economy.
They're all Xi Jinping's man.
Jean-Pierre Cabestan is an expert in Chinese politics at Hong Kong Baptist University.
The danger is when there is less pluralism, less debates, more concentration of power.
Meanwhile, questions swirl after former Chinese President Hu Jintao was suddenly escorted off stage Saturday. I'm Julie Walker.
A Brazilian politician has attacked federal police officers seeking to arrest him in his home, prompting an hours-long siege that caused alarm and a scramble for a response at the highest level of government. Roberto Jefferson, a former lawmaker and ally of President Jair Bolsonaro, fired a rifle at police and threw a grenade, wounding 2 officers in Rio de Janeiro state. He said in a video message that he refused to surrender, though by early evening he was in custody. The events were stunning even for Brazilians who've grown accustomed to far-right politicians thumbing their noses at Supreme Court justices. Recapping our top story, under pressure in the south of Ukraine, Russia fired missiles and drones into Ukrainian-held Mykolaiv on Sunday, destroying an apartment block in the shipbuilding city near the front, and said the war was trending towards, quote, uncontrolled escalation. It comes as Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu has said Ukraine could escalate by using a so-called dirty bomb. Ukraine's foreign minister rejected the allegation. Reporting by remote, I'm Joe Ramsey.
Lee Thompson.
And I'm Dan Novak.
This is VOA News. Reporting by remote, I'm Joe Ramsey. The United States warned on Monday there would be severe consequences if Russia used a nuclear weapon in Ukraine, as Western countries accused Moscow of plotting to escalate the war on the pretext that Kyiv was planning to deploy a so-called dirty bomb laced with nuclear material. With Ukrainian forces advancing into Russian-occupied Kherson province, top Russian officials phoned Western counterparts on Sunday and Monday to tell them of Moscow's suspicions. The foreign ministers of France, Britain, and the United States rejected the allegations and reaffirmed their support for Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said the Russian accusation was a sign Moscow was planning such an attack itself and would blame Ukraine. 2 suspected Chinese intelligence officers have been charged with attempting to obstruct the U.S. criminal investigation and prosecution of Chinese tech giant Huawei. The U.S. Justice Department announced on Monday the 2 men are charged with trying to direct a person they believed was a government cooperator to provide inside information about the Huawei investigation. But U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland says the person was a double agent working with the FBI.
The complaint alleges that in 2019, the defendants directed an employee at a U.S. government law enforcement agency to steal confidential information about the United States criminal prosecution of the company.
11 other Chinese officials have been charged with various offenses. Washington has long accused Beijing of meddling in U.S. political affairs and stealing secrets and intellectual property. Find more at voanews.com. This is VOA News. The warring sides in Ethiopia were readying Monday for peace talks in South Africa aimed at finding a peaceful solution to the brutal 2-year conflict. The African Union-led negotiations had been flagged to start Monday after a surge in fighting that has triggered alarm in the international community and fears for civilians caught in the crossfire. But as evening fell, there was no word from any of those involved about whether the talks had started or exactly where they would be held. Diplomatic pressure has been mounting to bring a halt to the war in Africa's second most populous country that has left millions in need of humanitarian aid, and according to the United States, as many as 500,000 dead. A spokesman for the rebel authorities in Tigray announced their delegation's arrival in South Africa in a tweet late Sunday. Addis Ababa said in a statement its delegation had left for South Africa on Monday morning. The White House is calling for action in response to the school shooting in the U.S. Midwestern city of St. Louis that's left 3 people dead and others injured. AP correspondent Jackie Quinn reports.
According to Education Week, the Monday morning gun violence at a St. Louis charter high school was the 40th school shooting this year. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says lawmakers need to do something.
Every day that the Senate fails to send assault weapons ban to the president's desk or waits to take other common sense actions is a day too late for our families and communities.
Police say the gunman broke into the school, which was locked, calling out that people were going to die. He fatally shot a woman and a teenage girl and wounded 6 others before police killed him in an exchange of gunfire. I'm Jackie Quinn.
Recap our top story. The United States warned on Monday there would be severe consequences if Russia used a nuclear weapon in Ukraine, as Western countries accused Moscow of plotting to escalate the war on the pretext that Kyiv was planning to deploy a so-called dirty bomb laced with nuclear material. With Ukrainian forces advancing into Russian-occupied Kherson province, top Russian officials phoned Western counterparts on Sunday and Monday to tell them of Moscow's suspicions. The foreign ministers of France, Britain, and the United States rejected the allegations and reaffirmed their support for Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had said the Russian accusation was a sign Moscow was planning such an attack itself and would blame Ukraine. Reporting by remote, I'm Joe Ramsey.